a new war has revived a hateful old lie, which is this idea that the Jews are dragging America and the West into these hellish conflicts. We've seen a lot of that over the past 2.5 years. Here in the UK, for example, last night there was a gathering outside Downing Street, a pretty large gathering of people waving the flag of the Islamic Republic, chanting Allahu Akbar. I made the point that I found that sight far scarier than Donald Trump's tweets, although everyone is obsessing over Donald Trump rather than over the fact that there are people in the UK who want the Islamic Republic to win. This hostility to Israel that exists amongst the intellectual classes in the West is something that worries me enormously. What do people in Israel think of that? Do they just think they're a bunch of losers, or do they think it's a serious problem? How do they see it?
I can't speak for Israelis. Let me speak for myself, if I will. Long-standing understanding I've had that the West's inability to defend Israel, to stand with Israel, is a symptom and not the cause, a symptom of the West's refusal to defend itself. And that's what we've seen now. We've had European leaders come out and say, well, we understand that Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terror. We understand that Iran kills its own people, that it threatens other countries, but we're not going to do anything about it. All right. But somehow doing something about it is illegal. And we've seen, Trump did not treat his allies very nicely, but the refusal of countries like Spain to let the United States use their airspace. I would not be surprised if Trump, if he doesn't pull out of NATO, he's going to greatly degrade America's position and reduce America's position in NATO. And so the big question here is not so much is anti-Semitism, but it's huge. And my friends in the UK tell me that it's blown out. It's reached levels that no one could ever imagine. And it's true elsewhere too, can we still talk about a West, Brendan? Can we still talk about a place called the West that is willing to unite and defend itself? Now, we like to think in Israel that we defend not only ourselves, but we defend the West. Right now, we have something in the order of 400,000 reservists called up. Go out, they leave their families, leave their jobs, go out to fight for their country. 400,000 Israelis proportionately is the equivalent of about 24 million Americans. That's 8 million Americans more than fought in all of World War II. And you say to yourself, okay, who in the West, what countries are willing to actually go out and defend themselves? Is someone willing to pick up a gun and fight and die for Belgium today? What does that mean? And so the questions here run very deep. What is the West? Is the West willing to defend itself? Is the West willing to defend itself against radical Islam? I had some friends over from Spain last night talking about the Spanish policy of immigration. Basically, you can come from anywhere and get citizenship very, very quickly. Is it willing to stand up and defend its culture, defend your past? Do you recognize your past? I'm going to go on and on about this, but a couple of years ago, there was a decision, a vote taken in the EU, whether to consider Christianity one of the sources of European identity, and the EU voted it down. So you had 1,500 years of Christendom thrown out the window. But believe me, the enemies of the West aren't doing that, and they are willing to fight, and they know what they're about. And so these are deeper questions, which I think we all have to ask ourselves, not just in Israel.
Yeah, I was in Israel at the end of last year, and the thing that struck me was just the willingness of young Israeli people to take pride in their country and to stand up for their country. Obviously, they need to serve in the IDF, but it was incredibly inspiring, not least because polls in the United Kingdom continually find that 18 to 24-year-olds are incredibly unlikely to want to fight for this country, even if we were invaded. I mean, that number who are willing to fight just goes down all the time.
In America, too.
Yeah.
Too. Less than 1% of the United States American population serves in the military.
Yeah, it's really scary, and it's happening across Europe. Michael, this brings me on to my final question for you, which is, I guess, can Israel go it alone? You've already touched on this in relation to what Israel can't do on its own. It can't take out the Islamic Republic right now at this moment. It still has a lot of American support. But you know better than most that a lot of the West is turning against Israel. There is this scourge of anti-Zionism, which I find an incredibly worrying ideology, which is very pronounced in Europe in particular. Is there a situation where it can be Israel against the world? I mean, obviously, you don't want that to be the situation, but is it possible that Israel can look after itself, or must we try to mend these bonds between Western nations and Israel?
Well, I think the answer to both questions is yes. It's not and or. We should try our best to mend the relationships, and situations politically may change in Europe, in Great Britain certainly, and but at the same time, a day before this war broke out, we had a visit here from the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, who just happens to represent the largest country on earth and the most economically probably dynamic country on earth, who came here knowing that a war was about to break out and talked about his love for Israel and commitment for Israel. And so what we have to do is diversify our foreign policy portfolio. We have to, we've been, in the West, they talk about pivoting to Asia. We have to pivot to Asia. Diversify it, be less dependent. I think last week, the Israeli government announced that it was no longer going to do any military business with France. I think that's a very good decision. Not that they provide so much, but and if a country is willing to use that type of blackmail during a war, okay, yep, it's this decision. We just shouldn't have a relationship in that way. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to work, to improve our relationship with France or with Great Britain or with Belgium or even Spain, which is much harder. But we can't rely on it in the future. And I could take this to a deeper place is that for the last something like 2,000 years recently, the Jewish people have been trying to ingratiate ourselves to the West, to Western civilization, and we keep on getting put off, and not just put off, but massacred and expelled and gassed. And maybe at some point, maybe we should start internalizing the message. And I'll leave you with that thought. Maybe we should get the memo. Someone's trying to tell us something.